checking how much disk space I still have for today. That's good. Yeah, I feel the same way. Alrighty. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with this class. I brought this to the class because this way I can put a microphone kind of in the middle of the classroom. So this way, even if I have to walk over a little bit, it will still pick me up instead of fading out entirely. And yeah, it's good. I picked that up for $10. The tripod. Yeah, it's not really that sturdy. It looks really heavy, but a lot of the joints are kind of loose already. But for supporting a microphone, it still works. Let me turn off one bank of the lights. See if that gets a little better. The contrast is pretty good. This is a new projector. Okay, so I just looked up from last time, where we stopped. We talked about a potential question, like a pre and post condition, but using the reverse logic to do it. So what we'll do today is to look at a real practice exam. In fact, these questions came from the actual exam from last semester. Okay, so you're looking at questions from last semester. There's no need to hunt for past exams. I tell you exactly what I have from the previous semester. Which means every semester I start with all new questions. So yeah. All right, let's go ahead and get started with the practice exam. You can try this exam as many times as you want. Okay, there's no limit in terms of number of attempts. The purpose of this exam is twofold. There are two purposes to this exam. The first purpose is to talk about the scope and the kind of questions that I can ask in the exam for next Friday. Okay, that's the first purpose, which is probably the more important purpose. But the second purpose is also important. It gives you guys a chance to practice. Okay, not the question itself, not the nature of not the question itself, but the mechanism by which you turn in your answers. So that's this way you won't have any surprises by the time you take the exam on next Friday. Okay, so as we go along, I'll kind of show you tricks and things that you have to watch out for when you turn in your answer. Are there any questions before we proceed with practice exam number 1?
Are we going to do this here or in the computer lab?
Yeah, we're going to do it here.
Oh, okay.
But you can go to any computer after the class and practice, how to upload a file and stuff like that. So you definitely will have your chance, like a whole week to do the practice. And I will also save the answer to the questions, so in case you want to study the actual answers, it will also be uploaded at the end of today's class. So everything will be captured for the most part. Okay, so I'll go ahead and do a preview. And this is the first question. There are only 3 questions here. Your actual exam will have 4 questions. So that means one type of question will have a repetition. There will be one additional one for that type. This is the first question. Analyze the following code. We have a 3-line program, which is fairly simple. You are given that for some constant k, the post condition of line 3 is z equals 0 and y equals k plus 1 and x equals k. Before we go any further, let me just double check and make sure it is recorded. Okay. So do we understand the question itself? We want to step by step and sequentially deduce and explain the precondition of each line. In other words, we are starting with post 3, the post condition of all 3 lines of pseudocode. So we want to go back one step and say, okay, if we know what is post 3, can we somehow find out what is pre 3? Okay. And then from pre 3, which is post 2, we want to go back and see, can we find out what is post 1 or pre 2? From post 1, we can go back and see if we can find out anything about pre 1. So that's the nature of the question. We have to go backwards. Okay. This used to be an editor type of question. In other words, Moodle will give you an online editor for you to edit your answer. but because different people use different browsers, and some browsers have more issues than others, I just turned this into an upload type of deal, which is better because you have to save the file on the local computer anyway. So if your upload does not succeed, you still have a file. You can try again, or you can take a file somewhere else, or you can try some other way to submit the file. So that's why I turned it into a file-based submission. And this is the same kind of question as the same kind of interface that you will see in exam 1. Any questions about the question itself or the mechanism itself? No questions? Okay. In the exam, you will see the remaining amount of time on the title bar. In other words, Moodle will try to keep track of time for you. We will have 80 minutes for the exam. So there will be a countdown timer on the top on the title bar that will remind you how much time you have left. But the accuracy of that timer depends on the clock on your PC, which is not very good typically. So when you look at that time, you want to just look at it, as an estimate. Okay, if it tells you you have 57 minutes and 30 seconds, tell yourself you have 56 minutes left. Okay, so give yourself a little bit of buffer and margin, because that clock is not always accurate to the second. Okay, but getting back to this question here, use a text file to capture your answer and upload that file using the interface below the question, which is this interface here. Now we all know about this interface already because most of our homework assignment require a file upload. It works basically the same way. What kind of text file you want to use depends on you. You can use text Notepad. Notepad works fine. Plain text file will work. You can use WordPad if you want to use more formatting, tabs, and stuff like that. You can use OpenOffice Writer, or in this case, you can also use Microsoft Word. So if I don't put a restriction on, you have to use Calc, you can use Microsoft Word for that purpose. So are there any questions about what kind of text editor you can use? No questions? Just about anything under the sun. Okay, as long as I can open the file, you'll be fine. Okay, and I can open up most files. I don't think I can open WordPerfect files. So if you use WordPerfect, you'll be out of luck. Does anyone still use WordPerfect? No. WordStar? No. What is WordStar, right? Okay, so we'll go ahead and try to tackle this question. All right. So I will give you an answer that will go, in both directions. Okay, I will work my way back and then I work my way forward again to show you that it really is the correct answer. And for that purpose, I'll just use a plain text editor because I think most people will want to use a plain text editor because it's easy to work with. And we need to look at the question itself and look at the answer at the same time. This is what we're given. Post 3 is, we know z equals 0, and y equals k plus 1, and x equals k. For some k, we don't know exactly what the value of k is. We just know that this is what we know after post 3. The question is, well, given this, can we kind of deduce what is pre-3?
Yeah.
Okay. What do we know about pre-3?
Y is equal to k plus 1.
Okay, y equals k plus 1,
And
x equals k. How about z? Can I do something about z? Can I still say z equals to 0 before line 3?
No. You have no idea what z is. It could be anything.
Exactly, because once you overwrite the value of a variable, there's no way to retrieve what it used to be. And in this case, it's a special, well, it's not a special case, but the right-hand side does not refer to the left-hand side. So even though I know the current value after line 3, the value of z, there's no way for me to deduce what it was before because the function is not reversible. So that's, that means this is the best I can do. I cannot say anything about z when I go backwards. Okay. So given this, I know post 2 is pre-3, and that's basically because line 2 and 3 are sequential. In other words, line 3 follows line 2. So that's why the post condition of line 2 should be the same as the pre-condition of line 3. So now we can start to work with pre-2. Now what would be pre-2? In other words, after line 2, if I know y, after line 2, if I know that y equals k plus 1, what do I know about y before line 2?
N equals k.
Well, it's the same deal, isn't it? We just know that x equals k. Because if you look at line 2, the right-hand side does not refer to the left-hand side. So if the right-hand side does not refer to the left-hand side, it really is the same situation as line 3, because there's no way for me to reverse the step and go back to the prior value of y. So pre-2 is really just x equals k. Because there's nothing else I can deduce at this point. So after this, we can say post 1 equals pre-2. Oops. Yep. Because line 1 and 2 are sequential. So now we are going to work with pre-1. Pre-1 is x gets x plus 1. We know that after x gets x plus 1, x equals k. So what can we say about pre-1? X equals k minus 1. Very good. Okay, so that's the exact answer. In other words, this is the final answer. But people who give me this particular answer all by itself won't get any points, because I want the steps. I want people to show me why that is the case. So now, to make sure that I get all the points that I can possibly get, I will work my way forward again. In other words, I would say that, okay, I'm suspecting, I have a strong suspicion that pre-1 is x equals k minus 1. But I can go forward again to prove that I can get back to post 3 given this is true. Does everybody understand the approach? I work my way back to the precondition, to pre-1, and if pre-1 really is x equals k minus 1, I should be able to move forward, walk forward again, and get to post 3 being z equals 0 and y equals k plus 1 and x equals k. So let's go ahead and see if I can do that. Okay? By walking forward means that I have to use all the pre and post conditions, derivations. So I have to follow all those rules, all those steps, and explain everything. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. The right-hand side of line 1 refers to the left-hand side. Okay, any questions about this part? We are looking at x plus 1 is the right-hand side. It contains x, and that's why I say it refers to the left-hand side, which is just x itself. If I say f of x is x plus 1, then there's an inverse function x, f prime of x, is x minus 1. In other words, the right-hand side of the assignment of line 1 is reversible. Is that making any sense so far?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So that's why we can use the substitution rule. If I can use the substitution rule, the first thing I want to do is to say post 1 depends on is the substitution of pre-1. I look for occurrences of x, which is the variable on the left-hand side, and replace each occurrence with f prime applied to x. So don't forget this line here. This line here is worth at least a point all by itself, because it tells me that you understand how the post condition of line 1 relates to the precondition of line 1. You also know that you are supposed to use the inverse function of x, inverse function of f applied to x to replace x. So this line all by itself is worth some points already. In other words, if later on, if you apply, if you make a mistake and you use x plus 1 as f prime of x, I will still have to give you partial credit, because you knew what it started off with. You just use the wrong one when you actually carry out the substitution. So in the second line, what I do is I expand what is pre1, and I also expand what is f prime of x. Pre1 is here, x is here, and then f prime of x is this guy here. And that's my second step. The second step is nothing more than just finding out what each item is, and then expand inside the substitution operation. The third step is the application of the substitution itself. So in this case, I have x replaced by x minus 1 equals k minus 1. And if you want to, you can just say x equals k. The last step is a simplification. Are there any questions at this point? Nope. Okay, let's move on. So we're moving on to line 2. On line 2, the right-hand side does not refer to the left-hand side on line 2. So we have no choice but to use the forget rule. It's either one or the other when it comes to assignment statements, at least in this class. Okay, so given that we know that post 2 depends on, oh, there's one more thing to do. We have to say pre2 is post 1 because line 2 follows line 1. Okay, so now we go to post 2. Post 2 is the result of a forget operation applied to pre2. And what are we forgetting? Anything that contains references to y, the variable on the left-hand side. But in addition to the forget, we also have to remember to say, oh, but guess what? From now on, we know what is y, because y is x plus 1 from now on. Okay, then we go ahead and expand the items, or item in this case, inside the forget operation. We need pre2, which is post 1, and post 1 is exactly that. So we put it here, y equals x plus 1. And if you look at what we have to process, does it contain any references to y? Nope. So that means the forget operation really doesn't do anything because there's nothing to forget. There's no component mentioning y at all. So here we say the result of the forget operation is just x equals k and y equals x plus 1. Now in this case, it is important to say that, oh, since we know what is x and y equals x plus 1, you have to take this one step, because otherwise it won't get to the post condition that I have on inside the question itself. So this one extra step is actually important. Does everybody understand what I just did here? Because I know that x equals k, and I know y equals x plus 1, so I can actually deduce that y equals k plus 1 because x and k are exactly the same thing. Okay. So the last one is basically the same thing, so at this point it should be fairly boring because it's really the same mechanism reapplied to another line. Pre3 is post 2 because line 3 follows line 2. And then it's the same thing here. The right-hand side does not refer to the left-hand side on line 3. Use the forget rule. So we say post 3 equals forget, apply to pre3. This time, which component are we, or components containing which variable are we forgetting? Z, okay. And from now on, we know z equals to 0. Okay, so it's basically the same thing, just like last time. So we say forget, we find out what is pre3. Pre3 is post 2, which is this conjunction here. We put the entire thing here. And then we say z equals 0. So now we carry out the actual forget operation. Within this conjunction, is there any mentioning of the variable z? No. Nope, none whatsoever. So the result of the forget operation is the same as the item before the forget operation because there's really nothing to forget. There's nothing mentioning z in that condition. So that's the answer. I mean, technically speaking, you have to reorder the items inside the conjunction because in the question I put z equals 0 first. But if you give me this answer, or even if you give me x plus 1 instead of k plus 1, I'll still give you full credit. I mean, that's fine. Do we have any questions about this particular question?
I got
Yep.
one. Could you scroll up a little bit?
Sure.
Can you tell me how you got, I think it was post 1 before we even did everything?
You mean here?
Yeah, pre-1 equals x equals k minus 1. How did
This
you,
one here?
Yeah, how did you get minus 1?
Okay, well, first of all, we know what is pre-2. Are you convinced that pre-2 is x equals k?
Yes.
Okay. If you're convinced that that is the case, are you convinced that post 1 is pre-2? Because line 1 and 2 are sequential. Okay, so that's good. And we know what line 1 did to x, don't we? Line 1 is going to add 1 to x.
Okay.
So if we know the result of adding 1 to x is that x equals to k after line 1, that means the value of x before line 1 is going to be 1 fewer or 1 less than what it used to be, or 1 less than what it will be. Okay. Is that making any sense?
Yeah.
And that's why I can deduce that x equals k minus 1. Any other questions? Mm-hmm.
Why is it minus the plus?
Sorry?
Why is it minus the plus?
Because we are moving backwards. Because we are given post 1. We are given post 1 is x equals k. In other words, we know after line 1, x equals k. Okay? And then you have to look at the effect of line 1. What does line 1 do to x?
Add 1.
Add 1. So what would be the value of x before line 1? You get it? Okay, very good. So any other questions about question number 1? Yes?
Oh, I was just wondering, why can't this be multiple choice?
Because, okay, well, that's a very legitimate question, because if it's multiple choice, it makes my job a whole lot easier. Okay, I don't care about you guys, but it makes my job a whole lot easier, right? I mean, I can just let Moodle grade everything, and I just kind of sit back and look at the grades come in, and that'll be the end of it. What I found out over the years, okay, I started teaching this class in about 2002, 2003 or so. What I found out was, a lot of students can ace the exams if it is all multiple choice, but when it comes to actually, writing the code or explaining the rationale behind, how things happen, they could not do it. So I found that, with multiple choice questions, at least the ones that I come up with, could not truly assess, whether someone has a good understanding of the material. So that's why, I don't use multiple choice. It does generate a lot more work for myself compared to multiple choice, because in these cases I have to look at each and every single answer, and people turn in answers that do not conform to the standard that I'm expecting. So I have to give partial credit to certain things and identify what key concepts am I trying to identify, and assign partial credit accordingly. So it does make my job a whole lot more difficult, especially when I have two sections only, in this semester, and each one only has about 40 students. I get a big pile of paper to grade, but it does help, It does help me to see, who understands the concept and who does not, truly understand every single concept, whether they can apply the concept or not. I have taken, some tests myself, whether it's, multiple choice or open-ended question. And I found that, with multiple choice, there are a lot of techniques that people can apply that would not help in a essay type of open-ended questions. And that's, to me, that's a better mechanism to assess whether people have a good understanding of the material. Yep.
So I have a question. So on this one, we started at the end, we went backwards, and then for full credit, you want us to process through again.
Well, in this case, I did not ask you to go forward again. But if I don't ask you to go forward again and just say that you have to explain each step of your answer, that becomes really subjective, right? I mean, because what is sufficient explanation is really hard to say. But if you move forward and use all the rules, the way that I applied, I have to give you full credit, because that's a real explanation of how one step follows another.
So if we're moving forward, do you want us to backtrack at the end of that too?
Now, the new question that you will see on next Friday won't be like this. It will just be, okay, give me what you think is pre-1, but then prove to me that that is the case, and you will have to move forward to prove the case.
Okay.
Yep. So in other words, you won't have to explain how you get to pre-1, but you have to use your pre-1 to move forward to get to the post-3 in this case, to show that your pre-1 is consistent with the post-3.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, good question. Very good question. Any other questions? No? Okay. So here comes the part that explains the mechanism to turn in your answer. It's basically the same way as turning in your answers of your assignments. So you click the browse button here. Oh wait, I forgot to save it. So in the exam, make sure you save your file often, just in case something happens to the editor or something like that. So in this case, I'll save this to today's folder. In other words, if you open up the folder that I will save to today, you will also see the same text file. And I'll call this reverse.txt because it is tracking the execution of a program in a reverse way. So after I save the file, I can close it. And I also suggest that you bring your own flash drive on next Friday and save your files on your own flash drive. So that way, 1, you have a copy that is yours. 2, if the computer crashes, you're not saving it on the hard drive of the computer that is crashing, it's on your own thumb drive. So that means you can move on to the next workstation, plug in your thumb drive, and you still have the file with you. And the third thing is, if you put OpenOffice Portable on your thumb drive, you don't have to depend on the OpenOffice installed in the lab. So just in case anything happens, you have self-reliance in that case. Yep.
Are we doing this in OpenOffice or are we doing this in like a text editor?
You can use Notepad. Yeah, this one you can use Notepad, but the next question you have to use OpenOffice.
Like a spreadsheet or something?
Yeah, it's a spreadsheet kind of thing. Yep. So let me save this file first. Did I save it already?
Yeah.
You did? Okay.
And they're not worried
I'm
about
trying to
people's
upload.
thumb drives infecting the computers?
They have antivirus software running on those computers, so you should be fairly safe. Or I should say the computers are fairly safe from you. Okay, so I'm going to upload a file. I have to go back to the folder where I saved the file, which is the folder for today. I select the file, I click open, and you can see the file name is typed in here. But it's not done yet, so don't go away. Make sure that you click Save without submitting. Okay? You can also click on the next question. That will also save the file, but personally, I always click Save without submitting. Don't click Save All and Finish. Because if you click Save, Submit All and Finish, that means you're done with the entire exam and you're not planning to come back and change your answers. Any one of them. Okay? Does everybody understand what Submit All and Finish will do? It ends the exam for you. So until you're all done, don't click that button. But I know someone is going to click that button by accident, like myself. But fortunately Moodle is smart enough to ask you, are you really sure? Do you understand what this will do? Let me see. You are about to close this attempt. Once you close the attempt, you will no longer be able to change your answers. Oh wait, I'm not done yet. Cancel. Okay, so you do have a second chance to cancel the operation. So if you see that screen, just be very careful. Read the message before you decide either whether to click OK or cancel. So in this case, I'm not ready yet because I still have 2 more questions to go. So I would click Save without submitting and scroll down to the screen again. Make sure that the answer has that file already in it. So this time I know the file is saved or uploaded to the file. And at this point, I can choose, I can go to question number 3, I can go back to question number 1, and you can see it has saved the answer already. So unless I want to resubmit, you can resubmit as many times as you want, but unless you want to resubmit, you're done with question number 1. Do we have any questions about the process to take the exam, the upload process?
Do you want us to number our answers?
No, you can use any name that you want.
Okay.
The only thing you have to be careful is not to turn in the wrong file to the question.
Okay.
That's the only thing you have to
So
be
there's
careful.
state section.
Exactly. That's the only thing you have to be careful about. Because if you did that, I would usually spot it, and I would just make a mental note or on a piece of paper. Okay, this person turned in this file intended for the other question. The question is, did you turn in the same file for both questions? That would be bad because if you just swap, I can still identify which one is which one and grade accordingly, and I have done it before. But if you turn in the same file to two different questions, that means one question does not have its own answer file. So that's the only thing you have to watch out for. In your case, I would just number in the question. If you want to be sure, just number the file according to the question number. So that way, when you look down to the file that you turn in, you know right away whether it's the right file for that question. That's just a recommendation. It's not something that is needed. I won't grade your exam based on the file name. So here's the second question. The second question is a forward derivation involving a conditional statement. Step by step, with explanations, derive pre-2, pre-4, post-2, post-4, and post-5 of the following algorithm in a text file. Assume the following. Okay, pre-1 is assumed to be x equals j and y equals k. Submit the text file using the interface below this question, basically the same format. So this time I use a text editor again. So go to Accessories and start up gedit. In your case, you just have to start up Notepad. Does everybody know how to start up Notepad in Windows?
Think of that thing you say, start Notepad.
You have to say computer first if that's a prompt. You have to say computer. Yes, you. Okay, start Notepad. Because what if you have multiple computers at home? Your toaster, your microwave oven, may always want to go, yes, what do you want to do? Then you have to identify which computer you're talking to, right? What a hassle. You can always spell out the 15-digit device ID too. All right, so this one is just a forward derivation, which is something that we have done time and again. In this case, we start with pre-2. Pre-1 is already given. Now, personally, this is just me. I would copy pre-1 anyway, just so that I have it on the answer sheet to refer to. You don't have to do it, but I would do it just because of my personal habit of doing things. Okay, so I would say pre-2 is pre-1 and the condition of the conditional statement. Okay. Now this step is actually quite important because if you only have time to type up to this point, this will give you some partial credit already. Because it is important because you have identified that the precondition of line 2 is not just the condition of the conditional statement, but whatever was true right before the entire conditional statement remains to be true right before you execute line 2. So that's why it is important to keep this step here, because if you do run out of time, it will give you some partial credit. And then the next line is just going to expand what is pre-1. Pre-1 is this mess here. And then we say x is greater than y because of the conditional statement. And that's our pre-2. You don't have to do any type of derivation to indicate that j is greater than k, even though that is the case, but there's no need to do it. Just do the minimum, okay? Just tell me what is pre-1 and say pre-1 is true and x is greater than y is also true. And same thing for pre-4. Now this is also an order that I personally like. I like to work with pre-2 and pre-4, and then I'd work with post-2 and post-4. But if you like post-2 and then pre-4 and then post-4, that's entirely up to you. But I would work with pre-4 as well because that also depends on pre-1. But this time it is the negation of x is greater than y, because otherwise I won't go to the else branch. So in this case, I just copy and paste what is pre-1. And I like to see it as x is less than or equal to y, but if you prefer not x is greater than y, that's your choice too. Then I work with post 2. Now, post 2 is a little bit more involved because now you have to identify the relationship between the right-hand side and the left-hand side. So in this case, I can say on line 2, the right-hand side does not refer to the left-hand side. Use the forget rule. Okay. So when you use the forget rule, it's the same boring stuff. You basically say the post condition of that line is the operation forget applied to the precondition of that line, and you have to forget all components that mention, in this case, which variable. Y, because y is the one on the left-hand side. But don't forget to mention that from now on, y equals x. Okay? I have seen a lot of people, doing one or the other. Some people forget about the forget part, and other people forget about the conjunction after the forget. So don't forget either component. And then the next line is just going to expand what is pre-2. And this is the nice thing about using an editor, because I don't have to hand copy everything. Okay. Also, don't remember this is an equal symbol here. Okay, I have seen a lot of people turning in something like this. That would be incorrect. I will not give any points to that. Okay, what is the difference? I mean, don't they mean exactly the same thing?
Well, that means it's less than negative x, right?
Well,
No.
it's not. Well, this is a dash, not an equal to. If it were an equal to, yes, then this becomes a relationship. Oh, you're right. Okay, it becomes x is less than negative x. But even if you can enter a arrow, it will still be wrong, because the arrow, the left arrow, is an operation. You are saying that y will get the value of x, which is okay in the program itself on its own line. But inside here, we want to look for a condition. In other words, we want to express the relationship between y and x. And that's why we have to use the equality symbol to state that x and y have exactly the same value. We are not making them the same, we are stating that they are the same already. Okay? So that's why it is important not to use the assignment operator, but to use the equality symbol to state that the two variables are exactly the same. Any questions at this point? Okay, so the next item to apply is to actually carry out the forget operation. In other words, we look at this big conjunction here, and then we say we have to forget all components that mention the variable y. Okay, so we only have one component left, which is x equals j, and the other part is y equals x. Is that okay so far? Okay. So we lost track of what the value of y was before the statement. We also lost track of which variable has a larger value. Well, not exactly, because we exchanged this with this one here. Okay, so we still know the relationship between y and x. It's just that what it was before is no longer true. Okay, and then we can say on line 4, basically almost the same deal, except this time the right-hand side does refer to the left-hand side. And then you have to say, f of x is x plus 1, which is the right-hand side, and it has an inverse function. F prime of x is x minus 1. And then we can use the substitution rule. So this part here is telling me several things all at once, which I think is the best way to do it, because it's telling me that not only the right-hand side refers to the left-hand side, and we also know that an inverse function exists for the right-hand side, and we'll know what the inverse function is. So it's basically spelling out all the things that I need to know, using not a whole lot of text in the file. So once you know how to use that, you have to use the substitution rule. Then you can use the overall template to use the substitution rule, which is post 4 is the result of the substitution operation applied to the precondition of line 4. You look for occurrences of the variable on the left-hand side. In this case, it is x, and you replace each occurrence with f prime applied to that variable. So once again, this line itself, by itself, is important because it tells me that you understand that the post condition depends on the precondition of the same line. Okay, because that's the key. How do you go from the precondition to the post condition? Okay, we go from the precondition to the post condition. Okay, but what are we doing? What are we doing to the precondition to get to the post condition? We find occurrences of x and replace it with the inverse function applied to x. Okay, so in case you run out of time right now at this point here and you turn in the file, this will get you some partial credit. So then we applied the actual thing, which means we're going to expand what is pre-for. Pre-for is this mess here, so we just copy the entire conjunction over, and f prime of x is this mess here, and sometimes I use the parentheses, a pair of parentheses just around it, and then we just have to apply that, as the next step. So we have x minus 1 equals j, because we are replacing this x with x minus 1. Y equals k does not change, and then here we have the same thing. X minus 1 is less than or equal to y, and that's the final answer for post 4. Now, personally, I would take it one more step, just so that it's a little bit easier to read. You don't have to do this, but for me, it's just a little bit obsessive, that I like to, make it easier to read, just like this. But you don't have to do this step, it's fine if you don't want to do it. Any questions at this point? Now that we know what is post 4 and what is post 2, we can work on what is post 5. Post 5 is post 4, post 2 or post 4. Why is that? Because it's a conditional statement.
Yeah.
We are at the merge point of the conditional statement. So there's really nothing to explain here other than we are at the merge point of a conditional statement. We're merging the two branches. So if you don't write anything other than just this, you will still get some partial credit. But the actual answer, if you want to get full credit, you just have to expand what is post 2 and what is post 4. So in this case, post 2 is this mess here, and post 4 is a bigger mess. But since we have an editor, you just copy and paste it. But you can see what I did a little bit earlier. Let me just repeat what I did. I say it is open paren, close paren, or open paren, close paren. Because without the parentheses, it is difficult to see, the priority of the operators. It's kind of like having a mixture of, addition and multiplications. Even though there is a built-in priority assignment to the operators, it is much more clear this way. You just use extra parentheses so that you can group the operations together. Yep.
I had a question. Can you substitute those variables further, like with y equals j, and then?
Yes, you can. You mean on this line here, right?
Yeah, like just make it nicer, I guess.
You don't have to, because it doesn't, when you, so instead of y here, you can use k, and then instead of x minus 1, you can use j, right? You could do that. It's not necessary. Yep. Okay. So are there any questions? Yep.
I think in the homework there was like one where you had to use like the inverse of a variable. Does that just make the variable negative?
Like the negation, x
Yeah.
equals,
Like
f of x is negative x.
Yeah.
Yeah, that turns it. That's the it flips it to the other direction.
Okay. So that would be the inverse then. That would be the inverse then.
Yeah. It's its own inverse.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. So I would save this file, and once again, in a test, don't wait until you're all done before you save it. I would save it, after, every time you're done with one step, you just go to File and then click, Save, or Control S will work on most editors. Because you want to make sure that you don't lose a lot of data just in case the file, or the computer crashes for any reason. So I would save this file as forward.txt. You need to know the name because you need to know what to look for when you open up the folder for today. Okay. Now the other thing is I would close the editor before I upload just to be sure. Because if you don't close Notepad before you upload, there is a slight chance that you might have forgotten to save the last bit of editing, and Notepad does not know that you're trying to upload the same file without saving everything first. Yep.
Is that as simplified as you want us to go in the last step, or if there's more simplification, do you want us to go further?
No, this is fine. The way that I have is all that I'm expecting.
Okay.
Yep. In other words, I'm not expecting people to do a lot of substitutions or algebraic, manipulation. If you can apply the forget and the substitution in its very raw form, that was doing good.
Okay.
Yep. Because after all, we did not list algebra as a prerequisite of this class. However, everything still goes back to the question, how much math do you need to know to do programming? It still kind of goes back to that question. And the answer is still the same. It depends on how good of a programmer do you want to be. And did I use the example of me, playing basketball in this class? Yeah. Well, that's the point. Sure, I can play basketball. It's just not. I won't be a very good basketball player. Okay, and it's the same thing with programming. Just about anyone can open a book, with a CD-ROM and copy and paste code, and have a rough understanding of what is going on. This chunk of code will accomplish this particular thing according to the description, and copy and paste. But it doesn't make that person a particularly good programmer. Okay, and it's the same deal. If I go play basketball, I can still shoot, hoops. It's just that I will miss most of the time and forget about playing competitively because I won't even touch the basketball in that case. When someone runs this way with a basketball, I'll just kind of step sideways. Yeah, don't hurt me. Say it without submitting. All right, the last question is a regular trace, which is the boring kind of question. So, with this kind of question, you can click on the file itself and open it right away. But if you did that, you have to save the file first before you can change it. Okay, so that's the only thing you have to remember. Yep.
So you said on the test we're going to be able to use open nodes, open internet, open
Yes.
YouTube, open
Yes.
any files that we bring to.
Yes, it's open anything except for live communication during the test. So no lifeline.
So if you get an email from me, you're not going to answer it.
You cannot answer email or use your cell phone.
So you could bring your notes. You can bring your notes.
You can bring your notes. You have full access to everything on Moodle. You have full access to the YouTube, recording of the class. You can go to the desk. They have headphones they can check out, or you can bring your own headphone to listen to the lecture notes again during the test. It's not going to be very effective. If you ask me, I don't think listening to the YouTube clip is going to be very effective in the test unless you have an index, of which date at what time of the recording is this topic. But if you have an index of that, you might as well just get everything on a piece of paper. Okay, but it is open just about anything except for live communication in any form. Okay, is that okay? I mean, does everybody understand what you can do during the test? I would not, personally, if you ask me, I would not rely on, say, Google or any search engine during the test. I would study the material, study all the sample files that I have collected up to this point. I would maybe review some of the video clips if I want to. I can fast forward for the most part and say, okay, this part I know already. Fast forward, fast forward, fast forward. Oh wait, this part here is a little bit tricky. I'm not quite sure I understand completely what Tech is saying. So listen to 2 or 3 minutes of it. Okay, now I think I understand. Write something. Okay, when you think something is tricky, something that you might forget, something that you think will be useful to refer to during the test. Write it down on your own in your own document. Okay, keep one copy on your flash drive, and print one copy out just in case something happens. Okay, so that way you have a backup, okay, and it's your own material. Now, when you work on your own material to bring to the test, it helps you in two ways. Now, for sure, it helps you during the test because you have that material to refer to, but it also helps you when you're studying. If you just read something, if you just listen to the YouTube, again, it's just going to go like this, okay? You understand the concept, no problem, but it's just going to go like this, okay? When you write it down, it's going to get into your head. Okay, I'm not sure about everybody else, but for myself, when I listen to a lecture, I can absorb the material, I can understand the material, but I won't remember anything. When I write it down on my own notebook, then I start to remember it. When I apply that, then it really sinks in. Okay, but that's just the way that my mind works. Okay, everybody works a little bit differently, and that's just the way how mine works. Okay, any questions at this point? No questions? So this is the last one. This is the last question in the sample test. We'll go ahead and do this one. You can just click open with, and that will open up the file, but it's going to be in read-only mode, so keep that in mind. Okay, when it's in read-only mode, you cannot make any changes because it is in read-only mode. So you have to first save it as, into the folder, and as I said, you want to save it into your own flash drive just in case you have to move on to a different workstation. Your file will be with you when you do that. So save, and now I have it saved into my own folder, which I will also upload at the end of today's class. Okay, so we have the pseudocode here. Well, first of all, read the question carefully. Download this file, the algorithm is in sheet 1, trace it in sheet 2. When you're done, upload the file using the interface below this question. You can only use OpenOffice Calc to edit this file. So in some questions, you have to use a particular tool. In some other questions, you can use just about anything that you want to use. Okay, so in this case, we'll go ahead and use OpenOffice Calc, which by this time, everybody in the class should know, and the trace should be done in sheet 2. And we'll go ahead and trace the algorithm. The algorithm starts with, the precondition is given to you already. Okay, without a precondition, there's nothing you can do, because you cannot compare x, which is unknown, to y, which is also unknown. So that's why it is important to start with a precondition. Yep.
So when we click on page 2, that's already going to be up there?
Yes. Yep. Especially when I say that in the question itself, trace it in sheet 2. So when I say that, it typically means that sheet 2 already has something. If it does not have anything, that usually means it doesn't matter. The variables can start with unknown values. In which case, you have to start with the precondition and put the question marks under the variables. Okay, but in this case, it's okay because they have predefined values. So we go to line 1. Line 1 is asking x is greater than y is, that's pretty obvious, true. Then we go to line 2. Line 2 is asking y is less than x is true, true. Okay, I just changed the direction of the comparison. Okay, a little bit tricky, but shouldn't really bother people much. On line 3, it doesn't do anything except to increment y. Y goes from 298 to 299. Then we go back to line 2. Okay, y is less than x is still true because x is 300 and y is 299. And we have to go back to line 3 again, add 1 to y, y becomes 300. We go back to line 2, y is less than x is now false because they are the same. And then we get out of the loop, there's one line after that, which is line 5, and then we get to post. That would be the correct trace of this algorithm.
Don't we turn x, on line 5, don't we turn x to 0?
Oh, that's right, I missed that, sorry. I would not have gotten full score. Okay, now I can tell you what people have done in the past. Okay, so in other words, every class, learn from the class from the past semester because I tell you what are the common mistakes. from the previous semester. In the previous semester, many people missed this line. In other words, they jumped directly from line 3 to line 5. That is incorrect. Okay? Because we have to go back to line 2. The significance of line 2 is we evaluate the condition. The condition is false, and that's why we are getting out of the loop. So that is important. Some people just completely miss the line 5 altogether. They don't even write down on line 5. Okay, so that would be a mistake. They still get partial credit for that. The mistake that hurt people most, okay, is to go through the loop only once. Okay, in other words, not having these lines. Okay, if the shaded lines, the highlighted lines or rows are gone, those people got the most deduction because it's telling me that those people did not understand what is a loop. Okay, the importance of a loop is you have to go back to the condition to reevaluate the condition. Okay, it's one thing to go back to line 2 at this point and accidentally say, oh, the condition is false already and I get out. But at least that person showed me that he or she understood that with a loop you have to go back to the beginning versus not even having this line traced, which means, oh, this is just like a conditional statement. I go in, I execute the body once, and I get out. So that's, to me, is a worse conceptual mistake. Okay, do we have any questions about this trace, and what I'm looking for when I read a trace? Basically the same thing as with the homework assignment, except in this case, I also prioritize and assign different point values to the concepts that I'm looking for. Yep.
So in a trace, are you always going to give us defined answers for the variables?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's something that you have to do, that I have to do in order to give you a trace. Now sometimes I give people questions like add up all the the first, third, fifth, and seventh digit of your student ID, and use that for variable x, and then add up the digit the second, the fourth, and the sixth digit as the second number, just so that different people will have to work with different numbers. That also makes grading a lot of fun too, because I have to check all that stuff and run the whole thing through. But basically, you will have to start with a known value for a trace to happen. Any other questions?
How many questions the test is going to have on it?
You will have 4 questions. So there will be another trace type of question, except there will be long. The one trace is going to be longer and more involved, and the second one is less involved. Wait, I take it back. That's not true. I'll give you another question, the multi-branch conditional statement, and it will ask you, give me an example that will make z equal to a certain thing. Okay? Let me give you a sample of that kind of question. Let me just give you one right away. Are there any questions about this trace at this point? Okay, so once again, you have to upload the file, but the trick to do it, at least to myself, is I will at least close this document first, because when you close a document and you have not saved the document yet, it will remind you to save it now. Okay, so I will do that before I go back to the Moodle interface to upload the file, because if I try to upload before I close the document from OpenOffice, there is a chance that I have forgotten to save it one last time before I upload. This way I know for sure that it's saved, every change is saved. So this way I can upload the file, and then also make sure you upload the right file, because if you upload the wrong file, I cannot grade it, okay? Because you'll be uploading 2 files, one single file to 2 different questions, and one question won't have its own answer uploaded. So we'll say save without submitting. So basically what you want to do is to time yourself too. Okay, just go through this a few times, make sure you know the procedure, and then you time yourself and say, how much time do I need to upload a file? Because you have to prepare for that much of time. Because if you run out of time and you cannot upload the file at the end of the exam, Moodle will close the test and you won't be able to upload after a while. I will give you a warning, like 10 minutes before, 5 minutes before the deadline comes up, so you will get some warning from me as well as the title bar, but you still have to leave enough time to upload the file. Okay, so you might want to time yourself a little bit and say, okay, I can do it in 10 seconds. Okay, but to be sure, I will leave like 30 seconds to upload the file. So that way you know how much time you have to how much buffer you will need in order to upload the file. Now, once all the files are uploaded, I can still go back to an earlier question, and I can still download this file. Okay, I can actually click on that file, and I can just edit the file right away. This is a different editor, doesn't matter what it is. In Windows, it will open up Notepad right away, and you can still change the file, save it again, and then re-upload it. So as long as it is before the test, ends, as long as before the test ends, you can re-upload the file as many times as you want. You can resubmit your answers. Any questions at this point about the procedures of taking the exam? Yep.
So if we don't hit submit all and finish and the time runs up, is that still okay?
It's still okay. So that's okay. That's a very good question. The question is, what if you completely forgot about submitting all and finish, and you just let the timer expire? Two things may happen. One is your browser will automatically submit all and finish. That's a part of the script, and it will automatically do that. The second thing that may happen is when that happens, because your PC's clock does not synchronize with the server clock, so maybe it is already too late. But I can still finish that last step for you. Okay? But if you do not have the file uploaded at the time, then your file is not going to be uploaded. So you still want to hit save without submitting manually, but if you forget to click submit all and finish after all the files are uploaded, that's not an issue. Yep.
Are we meeting here before the test?
We are not meeting here before the test. We will meet in room 152. We will fill up section C first, and then this class is too big to fit all in section C, so we will also fit the back end part of section B.
And will we still come back here after the test?
Yes, we will come back here after the test so that I can rub salt on wound. I call that the rub salt on wound session because it will sting a little bit, but it is also it has its use, it has its function. Why would you rub salt on wound? Exactly. So that you remember, oh, I made that mistake here, oh, I made that mistake over there. But if you understand the mistake, you won't do it again. So that means in the final exam, you won't make the same mistakes again. Okay, so we will talk about the answers, right after the test. There was one time I was getting evaluated. We get evaluated every 3 years or so, and the evaluation was right after the exam. So it can mask my own deficiency. I can always say, oh, the students are just upset because it's after the test, right? Okay, any questions?
Wait, room 152 is in this building?
Room 152 is if you walk out of this door and you head to your left-hand side, turn left, there will be a fountain, a boat-like fountain. You cannot miss that. It's directly opposite to the fountain, and that's the main computer lab. If you just ask where's the CIS or computer science computer lab, that's where it is. Oh, that reminds me one more thing. Don't wait until next Friday to go to that lab the first time. If you have time right after this class, go to that lab and get registered. Okay, because before you use the computers in that lab the first time, you have to give the lab techs your student ID so that they can scan the barcode on the student ID and you will be in the system, and then you have to log in. You don't have to log in the first time anymore, but you still have a yellow form to sign that you'll be using the lab equipment and stuff like that. It will take some time. So if you can do it today, then you don't have to do it on next Friday. If you do it on next Friday, who knows how many people will be in front of you, and the test has already started, right? Okay, go ahead.
We registered last semester. Do we need to register this semester?
You have to do it every semester. Yep, you have to do it every semester. The yellow form is not really just an agreement that you'll be using the lab equipment and you understand the rules. It is actually a paper trail so that the college can get money, can get reimbursement for the usage of equipment in the lab. So that's a really, really important thing for us to do. Yep.
Can we still register in there without a student ID card?
You can still do that without a student ID card if you remember your student ID and you have another pictured ID of some kind. Driver's license will work.
Okay.
If you have your If you have a student ID card, it's a little bit faster because they have a little barcode scanner. They can just scan it. But if you remember your student ID and have your picture ID, that will still work.
Okay.
But you want to do it today and not next Friday, because if you do it on next Friday, then you might be using some of the time for the exam just to do that. So you want to do it today, and then next Friday, plan to be here a little bit before 8 o'clock. Most of you were here before 8 o'clock today anyway. But next Friday, if you want to use the entire 80 minutes for the exam, you want to be here a little bit early, so you can go into the lab, let's say by, I don't know, 7:50, 7:55 or so, log into a workstation, log into Moodle, get into the test, and hit the screen where it says, okay, you have to wait until 8 o'clock to start. So when 8 o'clock comes, you just refresh the screen and you'll be in. Instead of coming here at 8 o'clock, go to the lab, get registered, go to the workstation, log in for the first time, which will take a while, okay? And then you have to log into Moodle, and then you have to get into the test. That's going to take a few minutes off of the time that you could use to answer the test. Okay? If you get there early, you can also open up all the documents that you have prepared for yourself from your flash drive, so you have everything ready. When 8 o'clock comes, you refresh the screen, you get the first question, you're ready to answer the questions. Okay? Are there any other questions related to the exam? No questions? Okay. Let's go ahead and take an earlier break today, so that we'll start the second half after the break. So be back by 9:17.